Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Makana Man at YouTube with another honing your airbrush skills video. Today, due to a very popular demand, I'll be demonstrating my old method of cleaning an airbrush without an ultrasonic cleaner. Personally, I find this technique redundant. I have an ultrasonic cleaner. I think it is a must-buy tool, and I find it absolutely superior to this method. But for those who don't want to use it, can't afford it, whatever reasons, or using a more expensive airbrush, this is an alternative. I'm going to go from absolute scratch because I believe there's probably a few people not watching this series because they find the ultrasonic cleaning part irrelevant to their method. So we're going from absolute start to finish. A warning, a disclaimer, this is an experimental and exploratory series. This is me playing and experimenting with a DH103 Sparmax airbrush, which is very versatile and not easy to break. If you have a more premium airbrush such as an Iwata or a Pache or name brand, they may require different care. Their manufacturer instructions would probably be ideal to look at, as well as other people that use it. So watch. Whatever you like, you can cherry pick and use. What you don't like, don't use. If you have a better alternative or better idea of maintaining and using your airbrush and airbrushing, please respond in the comments or make an old-fashioned style video response. We shall start immediately. The most important thing with airbrush maintenance is knowledge of the layout of your airbrush and the ability to pull it apart and put it back together. So you need to know how to remove every single piece efficiently and have it into its smallest and most broken down manner. If in the event any component is stuck, these little ridged areas here can be attached by a set of pliers and very, very loosely undone. This is your air solenoid. Sometimes paint can go down the air chamber and into here, and this happens a lot when you're ultrasonic cleaner. This solenoid can get jammed and air will not flow through. If you find that when doing your airbrushing test after you've finished, there's a little T-piece in there, work it multiple times, and this button here, just push it up 10 times, put in the airbrush, test it, take it down, and keep pushing it until it starts working. It will eventually loosen up and work. The internals shouldn't be too hard to remove, but it's important to remember how they go back together. The airbrush will come with a set of instructions. You'll notice that there is a glossy jelly substance on the components. This is petroleum jelly. It prevents paint going into the back end of the airbrush and drying, and keeping it lubricated so it can move very, very smoothly and thoroughly. Even though it looks like we're almost completely apart, there is a small brass T-bit inside. It can be removed by looking inside. You can see the bottom. Just push it out. And it drops out. It's covered in paint. Obviously the seal here has undone and is leaking a tiny bit of paint. That can happen. If that does happen, lubricating the back end of your airbrush also solves that. Be careful with your needle. You do not damage your needle. And removing the crown, there is a nozzle. If there's anything you have to be super careful with, it is that needle and that nozzle. Any damage occurs to it, you need to replace it. Now your airbrush will come with a small wrench like this. You do not get rid of it. It is to remove your nozzle. You just do a quarter turn, and the rest you do with your fingers. You do not completely do and undo with that. When you reattach it, you should attach it with your fingers and re-tighten it with one finger, and that's it. Just the force of one finger, because if you over tighten, due to how small and the fact that it's made out of a weak metal, it will thread, snap off, and you've got the thread inside the thread, thus making your airbrush destroyed. If you want to fix it, you might be able to ram a hobby knife inside and twist it and hopefully remove it without damaging the existing airbrush thread. So we have removed as many components as we can. The first step is, and you should wear gloves, using Q-tips and toilet paper, we're going to clean down every component with acetone or lacquer thinner. And it's it's quite time consuming. I'll demonstrate on a few parts. You can put it in a bowl and soak it for a bit. That's not exactly necessary, but all you have to do is just clean it. Even though it looks like there's nothing on it, you'll actually see some of the colours of the paint come through from wiping down some of the components. And that way they're free of paint, they're free of the extra thickness, they'll sit in the airbrush well. Once clean and before we reinsert, we're going to lubricate it. I will demonstrate that eventually, but these parts here, it's self-explanatory. If you can't reach it with tissue paper, like this component, you use a Q-tip and you just keep cleaning until there's no paint on the components. They're just solid nickel or metal or whatever it is, and free of paint. Now we have cleaned all the components there. I apologise for the shaky camera work. And now we're going to focus on the main body. This is the hardest bit. This is the bit that gets most of you in trouble. And the first thing we want to do is here, with the nozzle empty, we want to get our bottle cleaner. So this is a bottle brush cleaner, and you'll be mostly using the absolute smallest one. Dip it in thinner and you run it right through, and when you come out you should see some debris. There'll be very little. I cleaned it out a week ago while airbrushing a tank, and just wish it in and out. Clean the brush with a bit of tissue. You can see that there's paint and debris left over, and just get most of that garbage out. You're not going to get everything out, but you'll get most of it out. And again, I'll repeat and accentuate that ultrasonic cleaner will do a superior job, but this, which is quite essential, will cost you about $1.50 on eBay with shipping. It'll take a few weeks to get to you, so order it well before you need it, and then it'll arrive. We're going to get the biggest one, and we're going to remove any debris in the back end, which shouldn't be too much. It'll be mostly grease. Fortunately, it was heaps. You do that for a little while so you can get it as clean as possible. And you want to get right into here as well. If you have an ultrasonic cleaner, you probably want to clean this area out occasionally with a bottle brush. For the rest of the time, we're going to be cleaning the internals with a Q-tip, and you just want to swab out the paint chamber, just get anything out of there, and you want to swab out the very bottom. You'll get a mixture of grease and mixed paint. Don't put too much force on anywhere where there's an O-ring. You'll disturb and damage the O-ring, even if there's a little paint on it. So be it. And you just want to clean the back end. It's going to take a lot of Q-tips, probably about 10-20, and the idea is you keep cleaning the back end until the Q-tips come out clean. This part is going to take you the absolute longest in cleaning. So if you thought everything, wasn't too bad and seemed pretty easy, this back endy bit is where all the moving components are. It's where the air atomizers, that's where the trigger is being pulled. Any interruption in this back area is what's going to cause you heartache. To tell the truth, it's just better to use a $30, $40, $50 ultrasonic cleaner. But you can see, if you have to not have one for a few months, you can't afford one, your one's broken, you need to clean your airbrush for a competition, you're at a friend's house, or for whatever reason why you don't have an ultrasonic cleaner, it does not hurt to have the bottle cleaner, and it does not hurt to just know how to do this or do it once or twice. Well, it's a very good experience, and what I recommend doing is you do your best to clean it out as good as possible. Put it in an ultrasonic cleaner, and then just watch how much extra crud comes out that you missed. I have done that a while ago, I think in one of my earliest videos, where I just did the best I can to clean without a bottle cleaner, and just a ton of gunk has come out. Now you can see, after all that talking, the cue buds have gone from an absolute jet black to a lighter transparent colour. I'm not going to have it perfectly clean. My patience is not that good today. I'm going to call this good enough. And we're going to lubricate the components. I just use Vaseline, which is petroleum jelly. You can use water-based personal lubricants, which work very nice, especially for the brand name stuff or the really fine stuff. Sewing machine oil is not too bad. They're a lot more liquidy, but they sort of get flushed out really nicely with thinners. So that way it's less likely to mix the paint. So anywhere that there is a thread, you'll want to grease up. And as well as anywhere where there is an O-ring. If you get into some areas and your jelly starts coming out black, there is some old lubricant probably still in there. The lubricant is mixed with the paint. It has changed the colour of the lubricant, but it's still doing its job. The paint over time, as it does have a hardener, will make the lubricant thicker and less effective, and that's why we pull apart the airbrush, clean it out, clean as much lubricant as we can out of it, and just re-lubricate it. Now, every month or so, or several weeks, you could do just a quick clean out, but every now and then when the quality of your airbrush just seems to be deteriorating, once or twice, and this is only for the people that are just doing the bottle cleaner technique, no ultrasonic cleaner, you want to just have a really good clean where you strip it down and you just really focus on detailing every component. You'd use a toothbrush, soak it in a container of thinner, rinse it out multiple times, and just give it extra good attention to get as much grease out and petroleum jelly as possible, because an ultrasonic cleaner will reach it, the bottle brushes won't, and it will just build up over time, which isn't a bad thing, but over time it will dry out, it will lose its moisture, it will harden. Now for the rest of the components, anywhere there is a thread, you want to grease and lubricate. This piece here, this particular one, you will want to go right in the inside and just fill it up with a little bit of grease. Doesn't matter if you get grease on the outside, that's not a problem. And this entire component you want lubricated, the whole thing. Your fingers can get a bit messy, that's a problem. Probably mentioned I put the spring inside there, and that way this component is just smooth as hell. Air solenoid, you want to lubricate the threads. This T-bit, you just want to have a little lubricant on it. And finally, the back half of the needle, we're also going to put a little jelly on. and it is time to assemble, and I hope I actually get this right without making too much of a fool of myself. So we drop the brass T on the top bit, and using the back of your needle we're going to slowly guide him here. Oh, and there we go. So he's nicely fallen in there. We want to get the plunger, put that inside, followed by the tongue. And then we can put in the rest of the components, which pushes the tongue to the far back. Lubricate the rear of the needle. Only put it in part of the way in, not all the way in. The nozzle. Now, as we've talked about the nozzle, we don't want to over tighten it. If it breaks, it's just going to slow us down. If you're new to this, and you can see just one finger, I got two fingers and I'm only pushing with this one finger. That is as tight as you are to go, no tighter. The problem with threads is when you tighten threads too much, it just damages the thread. People think you need to tighten as tight as possible. You just, even with really big threads with your plumbing fittings at home and whatnot, should only ever use the tightness of two fingers. Even with your taps at home, if you're tightening on and off your bathroom tap, if you always put too much pressure over time, the washers break and then you have to tighten it super hard, and then only the guy with the strongest bicep strength in the household can close it. That was a major unnecessary tangent. You can express or expect that sort of rhetoric on the Economan. I'm going to give a final wipe down of the airbrush with thinner, because we've got lubricant and grease all over our hands. Let's give it a really quick wipe down. We're going to attach it to our compressor. Don't forget your compressor maintenance. Empty the tank once a month. Empty your drains quite regularly. Empty your hose. Past videos will show that. I will hook it up, fill it up with air. I will run thinner through the cup a few times to get any remnant lubricant out. And we shall paint some lines. We shall do some other interesting things I filmed earlier on the week. I do not remember what they are, but you shall be surprised. I think there's a couple of things that I promised that I may not do this time around that I'll do next time, maybe involving nail polish and experiment with acetone. Stay tuned for that when I come back from Japan. And we will see what I whip together, and I will have another talk to you at the end of the video. Alright, so we got the compressor on. And we have airflow. So it's lubricated quite nicely. The solenoid is working. The compressor is completely free of water. I'm going to pour some thinner, just a little bit, into the cup. I'm going to put my finger over the end, push down, pull back, and let it bubble jet, which it's not, so I'll get back to you. The needle has got stuck in the nozzle. I sincerely hope I haven't split anything. So just using a pliers, I've just slightly pulled it out and pushed it back in. And it's spraying out, so I'm able to put my finger over the end again, and you can hear the bubbling. That's a bubble jet. And if there's any lubricant in the actual cup, it's perfectly mixed in with the thinner. Completely out, which you shouldn't actually be spraying thinner in the air. It's much better to purchase one of these. And then we're just rinsing out the airbrush. I'm going to put some paint in the airbrush, mix it 50-50 with thinner, and we'll practice drawing some lines on this piece of paper. Now, unlike the last video, I don't expect to get as good lines, a bit tired, airbrush is a bit shitty, don't really care. I am concerned that my nozzle is damaged from the needle being stuck in it, so I'm going to draw a couple of lines. I've dropped it to about 15 psi by guess. I haven't even looked. I've just assumed it from knowing the whistling sound from out of the airbrush. So once you've been airbrushing long enough, you actually just pick stuff up like that. So I just point away from the paper, press down. If there's anything that's caught on the needle or the crown, it's going to be spraying away. We go over the paper. I don't see any paint coming out, so that means the nozzle's not damaged in any way. There isn't a rip and it's not just splattering paint out. I'm going to pull back and move at the same time and just see how good of a line I get. Now from afar it looks pretty good, but looking close it is ever so fuzzy. There is the tiniest bit of splattering. I'm not 100% sure if it is from the slightest amount of damage on the needle or there's some sort of factor, but if I was just doing pre-shading, some detailing, whatever, I would be pretty happy. I'd actually airbrush with a paint a little thinner than this. Actually, I do think it is about a tad thick. Nonetheless, it's not too bad. My airbrush is in perfect working condition. The lines do look pretty straight. Not bad. The start and end tails are quite messy, though that could be fixed up. I'm just going to keep drawing lines on both sides, have a look at it, and more or less call it a day. So on this side I was pretty careful, pretty straight, not too bad. Again, there is a bit of splattering. I have been going for about post Gunpla Builders World Cup with the same nozzle and needle after I had a splitting issue, or I dropped and lost the nozzle. I don't remember what the issue was, but the needle and nozzle has been changed. The needle might be slightly worn, the nozzle might be slightly split. I'm not 100% happy with that, but if I did this just as general shading or fine lines on the kit, it'd be fine. If I was doing extra super fine work, I'd use my second airbrush, which I have sold and only down to one. I will be purchasing a new one very, very shortly. On the other side, still pretty tight, but when I did some of the shading stuff, it is obvious about 3 inches away of the splattering. If I thin the paint down a bit more, that will be hidden, though just not 100% happy with that. Once I finish, which I'm working on a couple of projects, they're just colouring in top coats and base paints, no shading, nothing serious. I could get away with that. When they're done, I will be changing the nozzle and needle, so I'll probably keep the old nozzle and needle in the airbrush. I'll do a test of a line, change the needle and nozzle, do a test of a line, and compare the pair and see how we go. This concludes the cleaning and adjustments element of this video, and I think we shall wrap it up with that much. Just point out, in a video that I have released this week, I have demonstrated or reviewed the Mr.Hobby ball bearing set. All it is just 40mm ball bearings in a bag. You put it in a container. When you shake it, the ball bearing actually bounces into the actual pigments of the paint and mixes it up better without the need of stirring. I have been airbrushing for a week with these ball bearings in the paint jars. I haven't been doing any stirring, which is great. And I just have to shake, pour in, away I go. Works beautifully. You do not have to buy the Mr.Hobby version. It's probably a little expensive because you're importing it from Japan. It's a name brand. Just go on eBay or an automotive or mechanic shop and buy 4 to 6 mil metal steel, stainless steel preferably, ball bearings. And yeah, just put one in, give it a shake, and it works just like a rattle can. If the paint is a bit petrified, it's been sitting around for a little too long, you might need to shake it for close to a minute, but it's just shake, open, ready to use. Too easy. Going to be playing with nail polish again. Now, I've primed the spoon, and again, as I've mentioned, spoons are terrible test platforms for your spraying, but that's what I'm using right now because it's what on hand. Primed with Tamiya primer, as well as all those pieces. And this is the reason. If you remembered, last month we painted a spoon in pink nail polish. Here it is. It's really smooth, and it's just flaked off. Now, I've been warned that nail polish does have a tendency of flaking and chipping and all sorts of stuff, and believe that for basic primer and a basic top coat, what I'm going to do to this spoon to see if I can make nail polish adhere to it, and of course apply a lot better, because last month I forgot to mix it and it was a failed experiment, as well as seeing what it's done here. So our mission is to see if I can apply it to the spoon and make it adhere perfectly. So we're going to go through the process of preparing a surface for premium metallic paint finish. Also, as mentioned in previous videos, Mr. Finishing Surfacer 1500 Black is an amazing primer. Now, the reason why I've used Tamiya first, I needed to use its micro-filling properties and etching properties on a vintage model that had a lot of imperfections and scratches and all sorts of business. So I wanted to get the best adhesion possible, as well as no flaws appearing. Now, when you're applying a premium metallic paint like Alclad, any tiny scratch, any seam line, any partially filled seam line is going to be visible. Now I'm just mixing this thinner 50-50. It's going to appear through the finish of the paintwork. So what you want to do is multiple times apply primer, putty, sand back. Primer, putty, sand back until it is absolutely a perfect finish. And that way, when people are looking at your wonderful deep sheen gloss metallic paint job, they're looking at the wonderful build job you've done and the paint job you've done, and not all the mistakes you left behind. All it is just takes patience, multiple days, and not going on to some sort of time limit and finishing a model for a competition or something. If you are, build it a lot earlier than the deadline. It's better to have a nicer model than something rushed for an event. So we mixed the primer, doing a test spray. Started off a bit translucent, went quite thick, and I've lost my spoon. Now, this pre-mixed large bottle of black primer is brilliant, and unfortunately, it's matte. So, we're going to have to put a gloss coat, probably a lacquer gloss coat, right over it. Because the best finish for metallics, silvers, golds, is gloss black. The light is going to reflect off the surface, and black, which is quite dark, brings out all the detail, all the shadowing, and black just enhances gloss with a much thicker and nicer sheen than white does. And you can see the spoons are a super shiny surface. That black is really sheeny. But once it dries, it's going to distort it a bit, and it's going to be a lot more matte because it is a matte based primer. There's matte pigments in it. Putting a simple coat of gloss on it will fix that. We'll look at it after this is dried for a few minutes. Suppose people don't watch every video of the series, and it's always good to re-demonstrate how to clean out an airbrush for swapping out a paint. So it's pretty caked in there. Like to give it a good wipe out. Dip your tissue in thinner. Wipe that out. Pull your needle out very gently. Give that a wipe too. And you can see it's done very, very, very quickly. It's let's see if I can get it done in under 2 minutes. Load up a tiny bit of thinner. Increase the air pressure. And then I'm going to fill up a tiny amount again, do the jet bubble technique, and just a few drops spray out, multiple times until the thinner that goes in the little chamber is, see, jet bubble, finger on nozzle, push down, pull back, bubbles, until the thinner in the actual cup is clear. So you can see it's clean inside the cup. Not sure about the internals. A little bit of thinner, jet bubble, ever so slightly miscoloured. I'm going to have to do that 2 more times, and we have a clean cup to airbrush with. Now I've just cleaned out my airbrush thoroughly, and I've loaded it up with Clear Base by Alclad. It's a bit pricey. I'm only using it up because I've got a bottle. Just lacquer Mr.Hobby clear 50-50 with thinner, which would be a lot cheaper option. That will do the job. But our spoon is dry to the touch, and you can see even though it's shiny, because the polished surface of the spoon, it is distorted. You cannot see a clear halo of the light from the light source. So if this was a textured, detailed model, it would be absolutely dead flat. And I'm going to dust on, because we've just had the PSI up. We've lowered it, because with cleaning out the PSI up, shove as much thinner out as possible. Now it's down. Going to dust on. And remember, before you spray on the surface, especially paint, you always point away, press down, go over the model, pull back, and paint on. So it's dusted on, dust on a little more, you do that until it doesn't look as gritty, it just looks like a smooth surface. Now, having a good look at our spoon, and it's going to dry pretty much with this intensity. Instead of seeing this really white circle which is reflecting the light off my lamp, instead of seeing this really big circular blob that's frosted and gradient lighting bouncing everywhere, we've got this really sharp perfectly. You can see the perfect profile of the light globe, and it is shiny, wet look, and glossy as hell. And after that dries, this is the perfect finish for metallics, because when you spray metallics over that, paint is a bit translucent. What's behind it comes through. When you put your alclads or whatever, it's going to be that much shinier, that much glossier, that much perfect. And looking closer at it, talking about imperfections and stuff, if you look really closely, I think there's a couple of dust particles. If you move it around, those dust particles appear as tiny bumps and lumps, and that's not too ideal. Normally we'll get a 1,000 or 2,000 grit sandpaper out and just buff it back until it's perfectly flat. A way to deal with that. But if that was a large gouge sign or a seam line, it would pretty much show. Forgot to mention, with the Alclad's clears and primers, very slow drying. Even though they are lacquers, they've got a ton of retardants in it. They pretty much dry instantly, but they stay in a putty, sticky consistency or surface, putty, for a very long time. So if you touch it after even 5, 10, half an hour of airbrushing, you're going to leave a nasty fingerprint or imperfection. So as soon as you spray this, don't touch it. But how it works, it's actually okay if you spray this and within 10 or so minutes you spray your coat of Alclad or whatever, and the two will dry and harden together. Just a tip regarding these, that's all. So second attempt at the nail polish. Going to give the jar a royal good stir, a royal good shake, and do this for a few minutes before we mix it inside the airbrush. So I just think this particular nail polish is just ever so slightly transparent, but we will get around it. Loading it up in the airbrush. There we go, it appears to be a lot thicker now. Luckily, we'll chuck some about 50-50 lacquer thinner in there. Compressor on. Mix it, and we'll be good. Now we shall do a test, and it is still extremely transparent. One coat, very little. Two coat, slight tinge. I don't believe that this is a solid colour, so on black it's definitely going to have to be built up. So it's really good to test these things out. Before you apply it on your model. And also, I don't think I had it cross-contaminated last time. I believe what could have happened was this is just a really, really weird colour. But also, thinking that this was metallic, I am on a black background. But the most important thing about this test is checking its durability and the ability to airbrush it on. Well, I've got other colours, so we can do further tests before the month is out, and I'll have to compile and release this as a video. What I've found, I'm using this now, and it's sort of, it's a glitter. It's generally a translucent paint with glitter in it. I've used half the jar. it separates and clumps very, very quickly. The pigment is intensely heavy, and after several coats, I'm getting something pretty interesting like this, which I think is kind of cool on a silver base. And I'm going to spray some on a spoon to look like what one layer is and how many layers it takes to do it. So I've got my spoon, got the back where I've did in the original pink and on the front black. And that's one coat. And it's almost like you're looking at a coat of colour shifting or pearlescent paint coat. So you can make something, you know, slightly glittery, or you can keep going until it's quite solid, like that colour. Thinned with lacquer thinner, of course, but I find when I put some in the airbrush and I mix it 50-50 with lacquer thinner, I normally have to use the jet bubble technique for about 10 times longer than when I'm mixing conventional paint, and I'm constantly having to mix it just to make sure it just doesn't clog immediately from the heavy pigments. So after many coats, it is just as intense as the actual bottle. Again, the trick was just shaking the bottle constantly, mixing in the airbrush pot constantly. It's glitter, not pigment. It's transparent, so it needs a lot of coats, 7, 8 very thin coats building up constantly from the very first thin layer which you saw. And the pink, again, I mixed it very well, thinned it 50-50, kept applying thin coats, and unlike lacquer paints, it is extremely vibrant, a little transparent. I could see 1 or 2 dark spots, only because I rushed it, but it is very shiny, and a few gloss coats on that. It's going to have like a deep finish. In the way of solid colours, not impressed. In the way of glitters and metallics, very cool. And here's an example of one of the pieces. It's had the darker one with the lighter pink shaded on top. It's going to have a few clear coats later, and it is very glittery, very shiny, highly metallic. I think it's going to look quite interesting when it's completely done with all the alclad and natural metal and gold pinstripes and everything. So can't wait to see it. Now here's a side project which is a complete experiment, something I've always wanted to do. A lot of car modelers who get that really deep wet look mirror finish sheen put a lot of effort in the finish of their model, from bare plastic, primer, all the way to paint. What I've done is I bought some Tamiya extra fine abrasive sandpaper. I used 1000 or 1200 grit sandpaper wet, 2000 grit sandpaper wet to polish up the surface, and then adding this product, the Mr.Hobby Mr. Compound 5, I pretty much applied a small amount of the polish, and using one of the little rags, they actually give you like 10 or 20 tiny little polishing rags, polished it like absolutely mad. It doesn't matter if there was a seam line, if I did some sanding there or not. It's extra glossy. Now, you heard me complaining when I was doing the matte top coat tutorial. Spoons are terrible for testing paint because their surface is food safe. They're naturally polished and super smooth and glossy. And this is what I'm doing this. When you put primer over it, matte paint over it, matte top coat, it just remains really glossy for a long time, where if you want a super matte finish, you would abrase the surface with a sandpaper like 400 grit and just get rid of that glossy sheen. But yeah, I'm going to apply a primer. I'm going to sand that back with 2000 grit sandpaper and polish it. Apply the paint, apply top coat, polish top coat, polish top coat, and then the final polish will be the 8000. I've got the 3000 here. I'll be using the 8000 for the best finish. We've just applied the Tamiya primer. Now, Tamiya primer is extremely smooth, though still with a micro filler. It does have a grit count and frosts the glossiness of pieces. Even though it's still quite shiny, it is significantly dulled. And I was asked, why would you polish and sand primer? The simple answer is paint is translucent, it's see-through. Whatever's underneath will reflect on the top. The shinier the spoon, the shinier the surface. I'm going to polish the primer. The layer of paint that I'm putting over is lacquer, so it's still going to latch on and eat into it, and sand and polish each layer. And when I have my final gloss coat with the final polish and rub down, it's going to be extremely shiny. So first I'm going to rub this piece down with 2000 grit Tamiya sandpaper. Alright, the process is pretty easy. I've cut a small piece, I dip the piece in water, and we can see how shiny it is. Slightly rub repetitively, various angles, and all we're doing is just any rough texture there is, it's just being taken off. When you have paint down, you don't want to go too harsh, because like I did go a bit hard, and you can see that the corner has stripped back to plastic. You don't want to rub that hard. Rub it back, and you can see it is significantly shinier than this side. Now, an example of how to do it properly without risk and fear of ruining your paint job, even at 2000, you don't apply any force with your finger. You just literally put it on and you just rub it, and that's about it. Just as shiny as that, without the damage of the paint or primer being removed. So just for your first time on primer, test piece, just have a go at it, see how much it does take to damage it, and you don't actually put force down on your fingers. You're merely holding the paper and rubbing it against the surface. This is also another good reason why I put 2 layers of primer down instead of 1, so that it wouldn't lift up. So that's done. If there was any orange peel, texture faults, dust trapped in paint, imperfections, that has just been sanded off. Besides 3-4 pieces who I nicked the edges and went to bare plastic like here, I've eventually learnt the pressure that was appropriate, and all the other pieces are absolutely perfect. So I made a mistake on 4 or 5 pieces, and I think in future when I do this again, it's not going to happen as often. I just have to keep the sandpaper lubricated at all times, so after a couple of passes you're constantly re-ducking it or dunking it. And yeah, just when you go over the edges and you're even putting a little pressure, that's where all the contact is, so I just need to be careful. Now I'll be using the compound. This is 3000. I'm going to save the 8000 until the last layer, and I've got a little application pad, and it comes with a heap of them. So after a bit of shaking, it is literally, so you got a lovely fine small applicator. It is literally, from my understanding and looking at a few tutorials and just trying this on the bare plastic, it's adding a small dot, getting my buffing plier, and just rubbing. Medium amount of force, and you're just constantly rubbing. And eventually it comes up to a absolutely lovely shine. So if we get the other piece just under direct light, I don't know if you could see here, but out of the 2 pieces, the one here on my left, it is significantly shinier and more reflective than the one on the right that hasn't been done yet. So it's just simple as second time around. Apply a small dot. You just keep rubbing it in and buffing and buffing and buffing and buffing and buffing and buffing. And it's beautifully shiny. And all it is just a paste with a really fine grit, and you're just rubbing it with this cloth getting caught, and it's just scratching away at the surface to develop shine at a level that we can't exactly see with our eyes. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's going to have to be cleaned off, which I'll show you, and then I can apply more layers of paint. Alright, with all of them now polished, and I'm only going by the instructions here, I'm not 100% what I'm doing. The polish or the buffing material is still on the piece, and it recommends to clean it off, and I believe it's probably because it's going to interfere with paint sticking, so it's best to take the advice. Further research recommends that detergent and water does the trick. So we've got some detergent water, got regular water, we've got a dish sponge, and I just think it's just a case of, and as I've proved when I've applied the primer on, did the exact same thing. I removed the polish with just this really soft sponge that's getting shredded by my piece. And then just cleaning it off in some water and drying it off with a towel. Let it sit around for a few days because of work and commitments and whatnot. Put a top coat on, or gloss coat. It's pretty shiny. Put a gloss coat on, paint it, gloss coat, 3000 and 8000 grit polish, then top coat, then polish, then top coat, then polish, all the way until it's ridiculously shiny, and just buffing it up with the tissue paper. It's beautifully shiny. You can see how that's reflecting like crazy, which is not natural to when primer is applied to something. So I can't actually wait to see what the 8000 grit is going to look like after that's been applied on. And this piece, after drying, is going to be absolutely ready for paint. Hello, and this is the conclusion and sign-off proportion of the video. Just having a quick look at what I filmed a few weeks ago, which is pretty good. More stuff on application of nail polish and polishing and sanding pieces after painting. So you should all definitely enjoy that. Once those methods and techniques are more mastered, they'll be made into fully fledged documentaries, but for now they will do. Just also a reminder, which I probably don't talk about safety in these videos enough, wear respirators when airbrushing, even if you are in an outside garage area, something that's annexed from your house. I'm in a studio with a large door, literally a meter to my right, with the door open, multiple fans and an extraction fan to take it outside. Even if you're doing that and you're outside, the fumes can still blow in your face. You could still breathe in the particles. I've read the MSDSs for lack of paints, lack of particles. It can be quite devastating on the lungs and on your central nervous system. Gives you all sorts of brain defects. Not very good stuff. Now this is obviously in industrial quantities, heavy metals in your bloodstream. We're not consuming industrial amounts, but over heavy prolonged modelling sessions over many years, our health is very important and we want to look after it. So you want to buy an organic half-face respirator that deals with vapors, gas and particles. You can pick them up from your hardware store, anywhere that sells paints, automotive store. Spend a decent amount of money. The cheap ones are very uncomfortable on the face. This is one that used to belong to my mother, who did very heavy chemical work in ceramics, and it's not rubber or latex. It actually feels like some sort of polymer or vinyl. It feels alright on the skin. For gentlemen with beards, you want to tighten it so it doesn't seep through your man mane. And change your filters regularly. So remember, you really need to get them. I know some people are on a budget. I know some people cheap out on a few things. They save money on thinner or paints, or they don't want to buy expensive things. They want to just spend money on model kits and stuff that glorifies the model kits immediately. When you commit to airbrushing, your health should be important, and I honestly think for the sake of your health, a good $40-50 spent at a hardware store. If you want something of a high quality, $100-150. You can upgrade later if you want to airbrush over long periods of time and actually wear them. Sometimes I can be guilty of just floor polish. It's just acrylic. I'm just going to quickly spray something, but I should do what I preach and just wear them as much as possible. The whole OH&S lecture is completely out. With airbrushing, it's all about practice. These are experimental videos. These are me mucking around. These are me doing tests, especially drawing the lines on a monthly basis, pulling apart, putting back together my airbrush. The first few dozen times I did use my airbrush, I was very skeptical and paranoid about adding paint, about pulling it apart, putting it back together. I used to put maintenance off because I didn't feel confident, but after doing it about 10-12 times I felt confident very quickly. So if you follow the trend of this video, if you paint lines and pull apart, clean your airbrush once a month, and if you're fairly new to airbrushing, in 12 months time you can probably quite easily be my cat's ruining stuff. You can be quite easily considered someone who's very competent, who's very skilled, and who can actually sit there and guide, teach and help other people with airbrushing. I encourage people to do the same every month. It would be even cooler if people documented themselves drawing lines and tuning it. The first set of lines may feel very embarrassing. You can go to my very first video anytime and see how fat, how grainy, how spluttery they are, and some of the more recent videos. I even commented with this one that I'm not 100% happy, and I've actually outlined what I'm pretty sure is the issue, which is thinner and the slightest rip in my nozzle. If I add a little extra thinner, I could probably even stretch the nozzle out longer, but at $1, why even bother? But in the end, with the airbrushing game, realistically, airbrush is a very complex tool. It is a universe. It's massive. The world of airbrushing is like this big. It's just infinitely big, and all I personally know, and I consider myself still a novice, is that much. That's all I know about airbrushing, and that's the world of airbrushing. If someone comes along and says they know everything, they've mastered it, they're absolutely dreaming. There's 1,000 different uses, 1,000 different methods. Some versions work for some people, some don't. My methods do not work for everybody, but for people that just have no idea or really struggling, I'm happy to throw out a line, and from when they pull themselves out of the beginner pool, they're able to also experiment and guide themselves. I'm constantly listening and following other people, and I pick up ideas from other people. I give out my ideas, and I don't know why a long time ago making airbrush videos was considered taboo, or if you did tutorials or guides on airbrushing you were considered arrogant. But I think the more out there, even if it's just people that are not sure what they're doing, they're experimenting, they're calling out for critiques, that would improve it. We can all improve and grow together. So let's make it less taboo. Let's make it less arrogant to make tutorials, to make experimental videos, and just share more. Let's build all of our knowledges from airbrushing from this much, and just contain more what's out there, and just stick it what's comfortable on the models that you want to finish, on the style of painting you want to do. If you just want to colour in, you want to colour in. If you want to shade, you want to shade. Everyone's different. This video was exclusively about cleaning your airbrush without an ultrasonic cleaner. Again, I did mention some people are probably not watching this series because they feel it's not for them because ultrasonic cleaners are involved. It is involved in a small amount. Just ignore those bits. There's a lot of other tips that are completely different. Now you've seen a version without an ultrasonic cleaner, so you can keep that in your head as a method of cleaning. Watch past videos or watch future videos, but hey, you don't even have to if you don't want it. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, until next time, I hope the video was informative, it was helpful. With every honing your airbrush video you do, I come across new things that I can record, cover. I can redo things that I've done in the past and show that the methods are a bit different. It's a bit more interesting how I attack particular colours, more paints. With every video that I've covered something, there's 3 new ideas for future videos, so I don't think I'll ever run out of ideas for this series of video, and we'll keep it as a monthly thing, remembering that December will not occur. I'll be in Japan and we'll be back with this series January. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, until next time, keep practicing your airbrushing. Catch you guys later.